Hello, Daylight Church Online. I'm H.L. Hussman. I'm the lead pastor here at Daylight, and we just want to say thanks for tuning into our broadcast and being a part of our online community. We've been brainstorming ways that we can effectively and efficiently connect more with people in remote locations that are watching us online, and I have a few opportunities I'd like you to know about. Number one, if you would introduce yourself, we would love to know you. You can email online@daylightchurch.com. That's online@daylightchurch.com. Just tell us who you are, where you're watching from, how you found out about us, and any other relevant information that you wanted to share. We would love that opportunity. Secondly, we have a website, mydaylightchurch.com, and on that website is a tab that says Join the Daylight Crew. There's things that you can do off-site that would benefit us and allow you to engage more with the community. You can join our prayer team and our prayer ministry. You can join our study team and our service team. You can join our small groups, and we're happy to Zoom you in. There's all kinds of opportunities on that tab, and we would appreciate if you would fill it out and make yourself known to us. If you believe that Daylight is kind of your home away from home and you don't have a faith community of your own, and you would like to support and be a part of this financially, you can do so at daylightchurch.com/giving or by texting the number 84321 and completing a short form and selecting Daylight Church as the place you're going to give. If there's any way we can serve you, we would love the opportunity, and you can always reach us at online@daylightchurch.com. Thanks, and enjoy the service.
How are we doing? Excellent, excellent. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Craig. We are actually a part of the Daylight Church Extended. So we live in Nashville, and I got to tell you, being here, there is no place like home. We miss it here. So today I wanted to tell you a subversive story. The parables, I like to refer to them as the subversive stories of Jesus. And typically what Jesus does within these stories is he takes us down a path toward conventional wisdom. So the audience believes he's going over here, and then what Jesus does is he turns the whole thing on its head, and he actually takes the audience over here. A great example, and this is not the parable we're going to be talking about today. I'm telling you another parable, but not the parable that we're going to be talking about today, is the Good Samaritan. The Good Samaritan is this parable about a man who was attacked and robbed and left for dead on the side of a road. A priest walked by and did not help the man. A Levite walked by and walked on the other side of the road and did not help the man. Now, in that time period, in the time of Jesus, that was the right thing to do. Because of purity laws, those individuals were not allowed to help the man by law. So they did technically, quote, the right thing. But what we're going to find out in that story is it wasn't the moral thing. So then a Samaritan walks by, and a Samaritan represents the despised people. They were the people of compromise. And the Samaritan goes down in the ditch and helps the person. So not only did Jesus put an enemy of Israel as the hero of the story, he actually says, flipping conventional wisdom on its head, that the moral and right thing to do is not to follow your purity laws, but instead to help the person that was left for dead in the bottom of the ditch. To which all of us say, well, duh. But to the original hearers, that was a subversive story. Let me give you another example that might hit a little bit closer to home for us. I'll give you kind of a fun one that's a little bit more modern, and then one that might kind of hit us a little bit more between the eyes. Let's see, which one do I want to share? Maybe I'll share them both. Okay, we'll start with this one. There was a priest at a monastery, and every morning he would preside over morning prayers. And there was a cat that would go and bother all of the people that were praying in the morning prayers. And so this priest decided to take the cat, and he took the cat and tied it to a tree outside of the sanctuary. And so day after day, the priest would go and track down the cat and then take it and tie it to the tree outside of morning prayers. Years went on, and eventually the cat died. And the priest had since passed on, and so his disciples, after the cat died, went down to the market and bought another cat so that they could tie that cat to the tree for morning prayers. 7 generations of cats later, the tree fell over and died, and so they went and they bought a new tree so that they could tie the 7th generation of cat to the morning tree, or to the tree before morning prayers. Eventually, the scholars came to this quaint little monastery and they started to write all of these deep theologies about why it is important to tie cats to trees before morning prayers. We kind of get the idea. Sometimes we can get lost, right, in these functions when in reality there was no theological reason at all for the cat being tied to the tree. It was simply because it was bothering people during morning prayers. There's a lot of things that we do within religious circles that have nothing to do with following God. It's just something that somebody decided to do because it was a very practical thing a long time ago, right? So another one that might hit close to home. Imagine for a moment that we lived in a world where Christianity was illegal and that you were going to be tried and convicted based on the evidence that the judge saw in your life on whether or not you were a Christian. So there's a pastor who... These people came into his home and they got all of this evidence. He had journals just full of all of his writings and prayers and thoughts to God. He had all of this sermon material, things that he had preached to people for years and years. And then the most convicting piece of evidence altogether was a well-worn Bible, highlighted, underlined. His accusers brought all of this before the judge. And the judge, after reviewing all of this, asked the man if he would renounce his faith in God, to which the man said nothing. He just stood there quietly in front of all of his accusers, silently praying for strength, that he would be able to withstand the temptation to renounce his faith and live, because this surely would have been a death sentence. The judge deliberated for a few hours and came back with his decision. He stood before the man and he said, I find no evidence of your guilt. You're free to leave. At this point, the pastor was completely confused. And he actually pushed back against the judge. He goes, excuse me, Judge, how could you find no evidence? Did you not look at all of the journals? Did you not hear all of my years' worth of sermons? Did you not see my Bible, which is clearly used? And the judge said, I saw all of that. And I believe that you are authentic in your belief that you are, in fact, a faithful Christian. However, until you actually live it out to where I see the evidence in your life, to where I can see in the way that you live, you are following God, that you love your neighbor in such a way that it impacts the world around you, then I will not convict you of this crime. See, we get the idea. Parables are subversive stories. They take you down a path and then they turn it on its head. So this morning, I want to talk about a parable that many of us maybe are pretty familiar with. It's simply known as the parable of the talents. In some translations, it says the parable of the bags of gold, which I think that's the best one. But this one is the one we're probably most familiar with. Bags of gold. Sometimes it's called the parable of the coins, parable of the talents. Now, I know we just got done with Halloween and we're already getting ready for Christmas, but contrary to popular belief, there's actually another holiday that is between Halloween and Christmas. Many of you may be celebrating it this week. It's called Thanksgiving. And so I thought that it would be good for us to talk about a parable that centers around the idea of gratitude. And hopefully for those of you that already know this parable really well, you're already going, what is he talking about? So let's read it. It is found in Matthew chapter 25. I'm going to read out of a real paper Bible this morning. Impressive, yes. These do exist still. Matthew 25, verse 14. For it will be like a man going on a journey who called his servants and entrusted to them his property. So you get this picture. A man is going away and he entrusts what he owns, his property, to his servants. To one, he gave 5 talents. To another, 2. To another, 1. To each according to his ability. We'll get to that in a second. Then he went away. He who had received the 5 talents went at once and traded with them, and he made 5 talents more. So also he who had the 2 talents made 2 talents more. But he who had received the 1 talent went and dug in the ground and hid his master's money. Now after a long time, the master of those servants came and settled accounts with them. He who had received the 5 talents came forward, bringing 5 talents more, saying, Master, you delivered to me 5 talents. Here, I have made 5 talents more. His master said to him, Well done, good and faithful servant. You ever heard that little phrase before? You have been faithful over little. I will set you over much. Enter into the joy of your master. I love that phrase. We'll talk about that later as well. And he also, who had the 2 talents, came forward saying, Master, you delivered to me 2 talents. Here, I have made 2 talents more. His master said to him, Well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful over a little. I will set you over much. Enter into the joy of your master. He also, who had received the 1 talent, came forward saying, Master, I knew you to be a hard man, reaping where you did not sow and gathering where you scattered no seed. So I was afraid, and I went and hid your talent in the ground. Here, you have what is yours. His master answered him. This is an ouch, by the way. You wicked and slothful servant. Dude, he gave you back what was yours. You wicked and slothful servant, you knew that I reap where I have not sown and gather where I scattered no seed. Then you ought to have invested my money with the bankers. And at my coming, I should have received what was my own with interest. So take the talent from him and give it to the one who has 10 talents. For to everyone who has will more be given, and he will have an abundance. But from the one who has not, even what he has will be taken away. And cast the worthless servant into outer darkness. In that place, there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. What the heck is happening in this story? Fascinating story, right? Now, for those of you that maybe grew up in church and religious environments like I did, I typically heard that story in connection with the fact that I better use the talents that God gave me. If I don't, I'm going to be judged for that, right? And then additionally, there was almost this idea that there are some people who are just more talented. They're more gifted. And because of that, they're more special, right? Because of whom more is given, more is required. That's kind of part of this, right? If you're given more, there's going to be more accountability. And so we get trapped immediately when we're using this parable as this example. We get trapped in the comparison game because we start looking around and we're wondering, what's wrong with me? Why wasn't I given some of these talents? It's really easy to do this if you are not musical. I can play the radio really well. But to look at all of the wonderful musicians and be like, how are they able to do that and I can't carry a tune in a bag? Like that doesn't fly, right? It's easy to look and compare ourselves to other people. But what if that's not what this parable is actually trying to get across? What if there's something else here? What if there wasn't only one way to look at a parable or a story? What if the Bible actually could speak to us in many different ways? Wow, right? So a couple of thoughts. First of all, a talent is not talking about talents that we have. We might be able to apply that way, but that's a little bit of a stretch within this. A talent is the equivalent of 20 years' wages. Some scholars would argue with that, and they would say it's 15 years' wages. Okay. I mean, it's not that much of a difference. So let's just kind of put that into today's terms. 1 talent, so the average individual annual income in the United States of America is approximately, and I'm just going to round it off for ease, $35,000. $35,000 for 20 years is how much? Anybody? $700,000, exactly. Yeah. Anybody, your life might be changed if somebody came up and gave you $700,000 right now? That's a huge amount of money, right? Life-changing amount of money. So we're already looking at one talent guy. That's a stupid amount of money that he was just given. That's a stupid amount of money. And we don't even know this. Only 3 servants were given any of this at all. Were there other servants that weren't given anything? So, I started to feel for one talent guy. I'm like, man, he was only given 1 talent. Everybody else was given all this other stuff. We don't even know if there are other people that didn't receive any talents. 1 talent is 20 years' wage. I no longer feel sorry for 1 talent guy. That's a stupid amount of money. Okay, then 2 talents? Hello? Anybody you could do with 1.4 million? Just me? No? Okay, right? 5 talents? $3.5 million? No, wait, am I missing that? My mind just went off. No, I'm off on that. Is it 3.5 million? Okay, anyway. Thank you. I know, right? Anybody you wish somebody would come up to you right now and just be like, here you go, 5 talents. Yeah, I think I could handle that. I might be able to figure out how to make that work. This is a stupid amount of money. This is never have to work for the rest of your life money. Right? Like this is go ahead and retire kind of money. That's how this story starts. So a few thoughts. Really simple observations, just kind of as we were reading the story. The story is about a master who gives talents to servants. Talents. And we just talked about the significance of a talent. It's a significant amount of money. And this master gives this amount of money to servants, not to those that would get an inheritance, not to sons, not to daughters, not to family members, not to friends, to servants. So already we're seeing this picture of the kind of master that looks at the lowly and gives them wild and extravagant gifts. What does this say about the master? A master gives talents to servants. Another observation. The master gives without instruction. And this is kind of a frustrating part of this parable to me a little bit. As somebody who likes detail, I like to know if I'm hitting my target. I like to know if I'm on the right track. I like feedback. I prefer that because otherwise you can just spend a lot of time doing something that doesn't matter, right? Or going in the wrong direction. So I really like instruction or feedback, but he gives without instruction. There weren't requirements attached to this, at least vocalized. He wasn't like, hey, here's your quota. Make sure you double this. He didn't give any instruction, which means that this master took a risk on servants, anticipating that they could do whatever they wanted with this crazy, extravagant gift. Disappear. Another thought. It says that it was given according to their ability. Now, here's a side note. The root word of ability is the same word that we find in the word power. So if you were to take those 2 words, ability and power. So when we look at this parable, it was given according to their ability. Power is used often in the New Testament in connection with the Holy Spirit, meaning the Holy Spirit's power. So there is this connection in ability not being about our ability, but about something else, right? In fact, the Apostle Paul goes on to talk about a part of this idea, and he says, grace was given to each one of us according to the measure of Christ's gift. So when we're even talking about each of their own ability, we're not talking about their own ability. We're talking about the measure of Christ's gift. That is grace upon grace, right? Ability, power, speaking, connoting, talking about the Holy Spirit's power that is working in and through us. So here's a question. What if the gift wasn't given to you according to the worth of your abilities? What if we didn't earn this gift called life? What if it was just freely given? What if, even in the midst of the craziness of the last year and a half, what if this life was still a gift? And what if this week we had an opportunity to sit back and express gratitude for that gift? And what if we didn't look at everybody else and compare our life with theirs, but instead we're grateful for the gift that was given by the grace according to Christ? So here's a thought about this parable in particular. It appears that participation, not production, is the point of the gift. It wasn't about doubling the investment. It's about using the investment. It was about using what was given, this gracious, extraordinary, extravagant gift. See, when we look at this then through this lens, that participation, not production, is the point of the gift, all of a sudden it makes a lot of sense why one talent guy wasn't looked too fondly upon. Because the point wasn't production from what they produced by investing the gift. The point was participating. The point was showing up with the gift. The point was having grace and gratitude for what was given. This extraordinary, extravagant gift. And what if we stopped looking at our lives through what we produce, and instead we just start showing up and living? I mean, think about this for a second. Israel in Egypt was over and over and over inundated with producing bricks, more bricks, 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 bricks. Every single day, 7 days a week, you have to produce more bricks. And in fact, you now have to produce more bricks without any straw, because apparently you need to be able to produce even more and more and more. And then they get into the wilderness and they receive the law. And what's one of the first things that they are told when they receive the law? 6 days you shall work, and 7, one day, shall be a Sabbath. Hold on a second. If I'm going to be productive, I got to work every day, right? But no. Wired into the entire thing is this idea that you are no longer in Egypt. You are not valued based on the production that you bring, but on whether or not you are actively participating with the gift that we have been given. Gifts are meant to be used. So simple, right? And yet, when I read that phrase, immediately I'm going, does my outlook reflect gratitude for the gifts that have been given my life? This extravagant, extraordinary opportunity that we have. So a couple of thoughts off of this as it pertains specifically to gifts. First of all, everything we have is about stewardship. We don't own anything. In fact, one day you will no longer be here and somebody else is going to have all of your stuff. Your stuff that you technically own right now isn't even yours forever. You can try to bury it in the ground. And the Egyptian kings tried to do, the pharaohs tried to do that too, but people found it. Right? Tutankhamun no longer owns his stuff. Museums and random grave robbers do. Right? Stewardship. We are taking care of what we are given. It's not permanent. It's not going with us one day. It's staying here. Everything within our lives is about stewardship. Parents, this is a great thing for us. Hello? What that means is we are simply responsible to best steward our children so that they can become successful in life. We're a steward of them. We don't own them. We are a steward of them. That takes it back a little bit to go, it's okay if you don't get everything right all the time. You're simply a steward. Keep showing up. Keep showing up. Second thought, risk. Stewardship and risk. The master risked a lot. In fact, one of his critiques of the guy that he only gave one talent to, and I hate even saying only one talent, that's a stupid amount of money. But one of the critiques was, I could have just put it in the bank and received interest on this, right? Then instead of you burying it in the ground. Hold on a second. The owner could have just put all of his talents in the bank and received interest on it. Instead, he's taking a chance on servants. He doesn't know what they're going to bring back. That's not the point of the gift. The point of the gift is not what is going to return back to the master. He gives a crazy, extraordinary, extravagant gift to servants. That is a huge risk. Wired in that, guess what the first two servants did? They took risks. They took risks. See, life is about stewardship. We only have this one life. Life is also about risk. If I wouldn't have put myself out there to ask out Sarah and then got shot down and put myself out there again to ask Sarah to go out with me, I would not have the life that I have today. We have to risk things. Stewardship and risk. And what's the most amazing part is this little phrase. It's one of my favorite phrases in this entire story. Enter into joy. When the master returned and he saw that the first two servants had doubled that investment, what did he do? He invited them to enter into his joy and share in that investment. That is amazing. And yet, for many of us, we read this parable as the parable of the unfair master, who gave one servant 5 talents and one servant 2 talents and another servant 1 talent. Poor 1 talent servant. It's the parable of the unfair master. And the most fascinating part about the response of the guy with 1 talent is he says this: I knew you were a hard man. Okay, now I just read this for us. For those of you that have read this parable before, at any point before this line, was this what you learned about the master? That he was a hard man? Was that the lesson of the story? Was that what we are pulling out of it? That he was a hard man? Is that what this story is telling us about the master? I don't think so. I don't see that anywhere else within this story. Did you know that there are people that have really crazy warped views of God that have nothing to do with God? Was that what you learned about the master? This crazy, extraordinary, unbelievable gift of grace, and yet your response is, well, I knew you were a hard man. That was what we took away. Each servant was given a ridiculous gift, a ridiculous gift. Each servant had an opportunity to use the gift. Nobody had a gun to their head. Nobody was forcing them to produce and produce and produce. They had an opportunity to use the gift, and one servant lost what he refused to use. He made the gift more about himself and preservation than about enjoying the extravagant gift of grace. Inaction always leads to loss. Isn't that true? For those of us back in our day that were athletes, inaction always leads to loss, doesn't it? I'm watching my son play soccer, and he's 9, and he can't beat me yet. But inaction leads to loss. I'm in my 40s. I can't play like I did when I was in my 20s. It doesn't work like that anymore. Inaction always leads to loss. The same is true with music. Those of you that have a penchant for music, you may not know this by looking at me, but I was actually the 3rd chair trumpet player at Prairie Hill Middle School in Roscoe, Illinois. If I were to pick up a trumpet right now, I don't even know that I can make a sound out of it. Inaction always leads to loss. The same is true with art. The same is true with craft, your trade. Inaction always leads to loss. If it's been a while and you pick something up that you used to do, you might, pick it up pretty quickly because you used to do it, but there's a gap, isn't there? Inaction always leads to loss. I love this little quote out of Jewish tradition. It just says this: Torah was freely given and therefore taught freely. Study Torah and you will gain more understanding. Torah, by the way, is like the first 5 books of the Bible. It kind of refers to law. Study Torah and you will gain more understanding. Stop and you will lose what you have gained. Whew. We can even lose understanding if we don't use it. So here's the point that I want to drive home today. Living life is serious business. Living life is serious business. What a shame. What a shame when we choose not to live, to use the extraordinary gift that we have been given. Next, the focus of the parable is not waiting for the master to return for judgment. I've been in too many Christian circles where we spend a lot of time waiting for the master to return for judgment. That is not the focus of the parable. The focus of the parable is about joyful participation with the extravagant and generous gift. Is there judgment in there? Sure. That's just not the focus. That is the focus. So this week, Thanksgiving week, 2021, year of our Lord. I gotta ask you, are you grateful? Are you grateful for the gift? And I want to challenge you to take time. For many of us, some of us, it's probably going to be a crazy week. For many of us, this is a week where we can relax a little bit, where we actually have an opportunity to take some time and reflect. You might have a day off of work. Maybe take some time during that day. Spend it to reflect on the gift of grace that we have been given, this one amazing life. And instead of looking around at your neighbors or other people that you wish your life was like, reflect on how amazing the gift that you have been given really is. Are you grateful for the gift?